State of the Granbury Volunteer Fire Department presentation by the fire chief. This is the second best part. You might. Oh, he's not?
Mr. Manager, Mayor.
It's moving up.
Yeah, it's unusual. I've been caught in pants in public again, and it's awkward for everyone, so. Mr. Mayor, City Manager, Council, appreciate your time. This is our kind of annual State of the Department discussion, and I'm going to do my best to fly right through it because I know you guys at the end of the day will have some questions for us. So here's 2023 by our numbers. So we had 1,576 calls. We had a 2-minute and 39-second en route time, a 5-minute and 43 travel time, and 22 minutes and 38 seconds on the scene. And I want to highlight that en route time. That's particularly from the moment that the pager goes off to the first truck en route. The national standard for career fire departments is 90 seconds. So you have something to kind of compare that to, 1.5 versus 2 minutes and 40 seconds. It's exceptional for volunteer. So one thing I do want to highlight, particularly for us, is there is starting to become the classic population increase and increase in call volume. And this slide particularly just shows that it is going up, but it's the classic 10%. You can hold all of our numbers by 10% in call volume increase, except for 23. We decreased just a little bit that year in total fire calls. The big difference between 22 and 23 is that we had a harder freeze in 22. It wasn't Snowmageddon, but we also had a hard freeze in 22, and that was what resulted in the extra fire alarms and sprinkler calls run. Prior to 2021, we were averaging less than 950 fire calls a year, and that number continued to decrease as you go further and further back. Now, this particular slide up here, and I probably should have brought my slide with me because it's a little small for me, but the thing I'm trying to highlight here specifically that we track is our city call volume and our county call volume. And unfortunately, I couldn't get all three on the same slide, but our city call volume for last year, squinting and staring really hard, I think was 1,135 calls last year. And then the combined county call volume was 461. There's another slide. I'm going to go forward, but I'll come back to this main slide. That one zoomed in a little bit better. And the main calls that we're always going to be highlighting is going to be structure fires, traffic accidents, and medicals. Particularly in the county, you can see if you scroll down, for the county, we had 70 calls in the county portion last year, and that particular call volume is not even remotely in our district. Those are mutual aid EMS calls.
Yeah, I was going to say that's an EMS call. Since you can't read it from up back there, you can turn around and look at it if you need to.
Yeah, I might literally have to do that. It's a little too tight for me. 1,115. But that's, particularly this year, one thing that we've been having to focus on is the extra medical call volume. And it is a factor. Texas EMS is working diligently through it. They've hired a bunch of people. I would say in their credit that things are getting better. And Ricky Reeves deserves a lot of credit for that. That said, if you look at the medical, particularly the medical call volume line for the cities, for the city, and it's right in the middle, and I'm going to step back and look at it, but I can tell you that you'll see that the first quarter, there may be a little bit of a high call volume there, but the second quarter, it goes higher. Third quarter, it goes higher, and fourth quarter, it goes higher. And that's just the stress on the system, and that's what's happening there, and it's being directly reflected with us. And those numbers are proportional between the city and the county call volume. Oh, let me go back. It's going to be the same thing. You'll see that just the call volume per quarter continues to increase. And it's one of those factors it's being addressed, it's being worked on now, and it's 100% external for us. Is there any particular questions about those two slides?
I would like to highlight the grass fires in the county, 140. Can you flip back to a previous slide?
Sure.
Grass fire in the city, 56. In the ETJ, 17. And so it kind of gives you an idea of what we're doing beyond our borders. I think if you flip back to the county slide, like you say, I wish it was all on the same. The 92 residential fires, 4 commercial for the county compared to the previous slide, please. 24 commercial in the city and 16 in the city residential. So the firefighting in the county for those type of activities is really heavy. Obviously, we respond to motor vehicle crashes. You've got rescue EMS on one line and you got accident on another. Could you kind of go into detail on the difference between those two?
Sure. So the accident is car accidents. That's what that is. Anything that's going to be vehicle related. Rescue EMS is going to be more of our technical rescue. That's why there's not a lot of it on there. But it's going to be high angle, swift water, lake rescues, confined space. And there's calls sometimes where at face value, it's a medical call, but they are entrapped in something, and sometimes it's just their own house or their own vehicle, and that's going to contribute to either a rescue or an extrication. So not all of them are TV melodramas and big impact calls, but the patient was still in a position where they needed the fire department.
Thank you.
Okay. There's the information that's provided here and any other information that I have a tendency to hand out associated with the department. It's kind of being fed to you in the sense of being waterboarded. There's a ton of information. If anyone ever has any questions about any of it, please ask, because I know it's a lot when I give it out. So moving forward, Granbury right now has 71 members. Last year, those 71 members had 9,675 individual responses, and they had a grand total of 6,858 hours on scene. So our average response times are types, and these are our average firefighters on scene. So last year, we averaged 11 firefighters per commercial fire, 10 for residential. Vehicle accidents, we average 7, and fire alarms. I always highlight fire alarms because, one, it's the boy who cried wolf almost every single time, and it's a call that is occasionally a legitimate working fire, smoke showing, fire showing, and you're still arriving on scene with enough personnel to meet NFPA standards for 2 in, 2 out, and 5 personnel's more than enough to get a lot of work done immediately on that scene. I would argue, don't get me wrong, 11 or 10 people or 7 on scene is a great number, but for every single call that the fire alarm represents, again, vast majority, 99.99% of these are the boy who cried wolf, and we're showing up with the appropriate personnel each time. That's one of our strongest response numbers, is that particular number. Citizen donations. So, computers were down for a little while, and all of that I had tracked on our share drive. It took me up until today, because the city's IT's got our share drive back up, and finally have that number. Last year we had $37,000 in donations. That's what we received in private donations. Grants and reimbursements for VFIS, we had a reimbursement of $12,283, reimbursed $19,700 for PPE, Off of the Big L fire, $11,000. That's a disaster mitigation reimbursement. Different call for Johnson County for disaster assistance. We've got $1,400 off of that. Texas Farm Bureau, $750. And Teeks and House Bill 2604, greater than $26,000 last year. So total reimbursement since 2020 is $78,000, and that does include grants. That does not include our newest $19,000. That number, I did forget to add that in there. So training last year, we had 3,255 hours of training, average of 28 per member, and 2 new fire academies completed last year. Through those fire academies, our members are coming out state certified through SFFMA 1 and 2. There's a lot that actually takes place for that to happen. And without talking forever about it, one thing I do want to highlight is our district president, Donnie Hurd. He's a training captain at GVFD, and our assistant chief, Jesse Slaughter, who's our training coordinator for the district. Kind of a big cat and surprise in the bag is we're working on getting reciprocity through TCFP. So our SFFMA certifications, if the firefighters are all the way through all 4 stages of their training, they'll actually be state recognized Texas Commission of Fire Protection firefighters. So that's a huge monumental leap forward, not only for volunteer firefighters, but particularly for us, because we've overemphasized using the program, making sure that we have a state standard that we follow, following through with the standard and acquiring all the testing and ultimately certification on it. Granbury's probably going to be one of the few towns in Texas that when the reciprocity comes through, will have upwards of 50 to 60 commissioned firefighters on staff. So, budget in brief last year, we had no major surprises. We fully transitioned into our new P25 radio network. Our ISO consultant, we had met with him in the fall of last year, and we had been on a brief pause, and we plan on challenging our ISO rating this year, and it'll be probably not this quarter, but definitely by the middle of next quarter. And I have very high hopes for that evaluation. Realistically, we should come out of there as an ISO 2 and should be very easily in an ISO 2. I didn't put the numbers up because quite frankly, we haven't hit an ISO 2, so I'm not going to brag too hard about it until we do it. But when we do hit an ISO 2, yeah, you'll probably see me cartwheeling around City Hall for a while. That's a monumental achievement, and don't get me wrong, that's big for the department, that's the city. I think ISO gets almost underspoken a little bit in how much the cities has to be able to reach those standards. Don't get me wrong, the fire department's part of it, but the truly hard part, the very, very expensive part is the city. And this council and Mr. Kaufman, you guys have made a huge, huge impact on that, and we're going to deliver on the ISO, and that's a big benefit. At the very end of the year, we had some money left over, and we took one of our older trucks. It's a great truck, great service, and sent it off for some repair work, and just to make sure that the truck can carry into its later years of service life easily and comfortably. So for this year, major projects, we want to continue to still grow the department. I know 71 sounds like a lot, but I can tell you that we do need more. Recruiting's going to be a big part of that. ISO challenge and the new rating. Long-term sustainability. The ISO, that adds, for a lack of better words, a term I always like to use is a golden junior woodchuck, golden star. The ISO is a gold star. The firefighter reciprocity and the state certified recognition of our program and the members is a gold star. there's lots of gold stars there, and what it's really equating to is long-term sustainability for the department and for the city. And there'll be another slide or two, and we'll talk about that. We're implementing a health and wellness program through one of our board of directors. We have Dr. Hedges. And again, we're talking about a volunteer organization trying to figure out how to implement a health and wellness program. A lot of these programs and other extraneous or external projects that I'm talking about, we've been using the Hood County subsidy to help take the pressure off of the city in that. That health and wellness program will be through the subsidy. Finally cleared. It was interesting getting to that point, but county purchased 2 new apparatus for GVFD. These apparatus will replace 2 city apparatus. Delivery times is interesting, anywhere between 1 year and 3 years out, but everyone's got that same story. And then ultimately, we're moving closer and closer to 3 fire and EMS stations in Hood County, and one of them is specifically with GVFD, and it'll be inside the city limits of Granbury, and it'll be up there on the north end of the loop, up there by Bacchus Elementary. That project is finally, looks like it's going to start moving forward pretty soon. Director Reeves had just signed the next round of paperwork with the county. So it looks like they're going to be moving forward with that project. I can't speak to the other EMS locations because frankly, they're not in my district and someone else can deal with that. So, okay, big write-up that I had, and this comes from our election cycle last year. I've always taken a pretty passive role in social media, but the typical write-up of why does Granbury not have a career fire department? And I sat down, put the time, energy, and effort into the write-up, and I feel very confident in my write-up. And as you see at the end of this, as we get to the end of these slides, it's going to be cost. That's the factor. Why having GVD is best for the city? We have a high average of firefighters on scene. That's non-salaried personnel. You have an adequate number of apparatus that the city's purchasing for the department. We're using it and we're getting it out there. And one of the more key factors on this is how fast we're en route. That's a big factor on this. As we move on, if you replace the VFD, what do you replace it with? Combination or full-time? So if you replace the VFD, what you have to survey is areas around you. Weatherford, Stephenville, Brownwood, Ennis, Cleburne. And as I just looked at their city budgets, proposed budgets for '24, I just did a basic cost analysis and looked at their salary and benefits line items for their firefighters and just divided it by the total amount of employees they had. And I had numbers for each of the cities. And as we go through it, you average all of those together for the average employee, salary and benefits is $127,000, $124 a year. So we have a number now, and when you base that number, you have to turn around and imply it into something. What are you replacing the volunteers with? Well, from my point of view, you have to at least replace what the volunteers are providing. And right now, they're providing you, on average, with 13 firefighters on a commercial structure fire. Kicker is that's 3 shifts. They don't work 24/7. Your volunteers do. So you have to cover 3 shifts. You got to find officers and chiefs. So I based the department off of 42 personnel. It's just a rough guess. You can go any direction you want. You can go with more. It just costs more. You can go with less. You're being provided less because the volunteers are providing more. So you take 42 personnel and you multiply it by $127,000 and it's $5.3 million. Or a 22-cent property tax increase from 38.5 to 60.5, or 57% total increase. And as you get through it, the question you have to ask is why? And it is a hard question to ask, and it's a hard question to ask publicly. And probably the most important thing that I want people to understand is, particularly in our community, we want the challenge, we want the burden, we want the responsibility of protecting our town. I cannot truly begin to describe to you how important this burden is to me. This is something to be proud of. And it is something that the department has embraced also. I can assure you 1,000%, none of this is possible with just me. I am not the factor in this. It is our membership, it is our officers, it's the work with the city, it's the work with our citizens, it is everyone. Because it's a complex machine, and unfortunately, it can be fragile. And I say, what you have to do is challenge the organization every year. There's nothing wrong with challenging the organization. Are you meeting your service standards for the for your citizenry? Are you hitting response times? Are you taking the right trucks? Are you getting there quick enough? Are they trained? It's not a social club. It's public safety. The volunteers are meeting that. We've established a tradition and a trajectory to continue to establish it and improve it. And that is the challenge that I ask from the city every single time. Challenge us. Oddly enough, I would say this. You hear this statement a lot. They're only volunteer. How much more can you ask? I would have agreed with that 4 years ago. Today, and I can't explain why, I say ask more. It is incredible. The more you ask of people, the more responsibility that you give them, the more ownership that they give of their community, they rise, and they do take it. And the difference with our organization is that we have a very specific niche of service that we provide. The best part about it is being volunteer and saving that theoretical $5.3 million a year is ultimately the other services and benefits that we can extend to the citizens. And sometimes it's tourism, and sometimes it's for other city departments, and sometimes it's for nothing fun or awesome, but it adds to the new city infrastructure. And the department gives us just a little bit of flexibility on that, as long as the organization is strong. One of the volunteer departments that I've been referencing a lot, there's a gigantic volunteer fire department on the south side of Houston. It's called League City. League City, it operates roughly like Granbury does. They have a 146-person department. They have 6 stations. They only run fire and rescue, and they have a priority dispatched medical. They really don't run a lot of medical calls, because if they did, in their 118,000 person city, it'd be 25 or 30,000 calls a year. Volunteers can't run that. But by being able to prioritize the fire to just specifically being volunteer, they're able to control that call volume a little bit more, and it's a lot more manageable. League City has a city budget of $331 million a year, and their VFD costs them $3.5 million. It has a huge impact if it's embraced. And I see Granbury being at that, I don't want to call it crossroads because it makes it sound melodramatic, but that's a decision that Granbury's going to have to make. It's not today, it's not tomorrow, but how long do you want to run with volunteer? I'm telling you that not only is it 10 or 25 or 30 years out, it's a lot further out than that. It just takes time and a commitment to a direction. There's just a segue to it. How far do you want to stay with it? I think a big part of it is meetings like this and our being open with the citizens and being open to questions and taking input and criticism and critique from the city and recommendations. That's vital for us. Oh, I just hit all that. More you ask, the higher they'll reach. We want the challenge. I just want to reiterate that. Okay. This weekend, I went down to a chief development program down in Austin, and there was a lot of stuff that they are covering that I feel very comfortable with. Part of it's a 10-year strategic plan. We have many plans, and we have multiple ways to access and review those plans. They're 2, 3, and 10-year work. So far, we're in the 3rd year of our strategic plan, and shockingly, we're actually ahead of where I expected to be. I suspect we'll have to revise it at year 5. In our 10-year planning, a big part of this is health and safety for our members and community risk reduction. One thing I want to highlight last year is in the actual city limits of the city of Granbury, we had one fire. And everyone knows this one fire very well because it happened about a block over and on a corner of the square. Okay? That fire was an extreme challenge for our organization, and it is very difficult to sit here on a public podium and tell people at how good of a success that fire was for us, while still acknowledging that for the business owner, they lost everything. And it puts us in a position where there's always more we can do for public education and relations, but still address community risk. And projects on the square is part of that. Ultimately, our firefighter health and safety, and I was talking about our health and wellness program. Not going to worry too much here on resource management, operations, and development. I've pretty much hammered that out. And at the end of the day, I really want to extend my thanks to City Council for your new purchase of our aerial and quick attack truck pictured here. So thank you very much. Our organization is looking very much to working with these apparatus, even if it is 2 and 3 years out.
I had one question.
Yes, sir.
The training that you go through, I'm very impressed with that. Do the other stations go through the same amount of training as we do here in Granbury?
We offer it to them. It's kind of an integral part of our program. The more that we train the departments around us, at the end of the day, if we handle their training, we know the level they're operating at. It makes everyone safer on scene. The vast majority of departments around us now in Hood County and even a little bit outside of Hood County are coming to Granbury for training.
Well, you offer it, do they accept?
Most of the time. Not every time, most of the time.
I'm not going to ask any more questions. It's not getting any more comfortable. Thank you. Yes, Chris?
First off, thank you for coming tonight. Great report. I think it shows that probably about 40% of our calls are out in the county, and the county does subsidize you guys with about $105,000 this year, and they just approved $335,000 out of a $7.9 million bond issue to buy those 2 vehicles. So hats off to them to contributing. I think they need to contribute more, and we'll continue to pursue that. But also want to brag about our department having a 3 ISO rating. What that means is your homeowner's insurance is cheaper or your business insurance is cheaper because of that great score. It could be as high as 10, and some communities have a 10. Out in the county, they have a 10. Inside the city limits, they have a 3. So when somebody says it costs too much to live in the city, I beg to differ if they'll check their insurance premium. But our property taxes are much lower than a lot of folks' homeowners insurance policy out in the county. But also, we've got 3 stations, and that's a lot to do with Mr. Brad Snyder sitting in the back. There was one of these pictures that we showed through here. It's his truck. He's got a whole fleet of vehicles that he has bought and fights fire for Granbury as a member of the VFD, Granbury Volunteer Fire Department. And we want to thank him for his expense and his donations that don't show up in the reports. It's just him working behind the scenes. When he has his crews there at the office and they're working and there's a tone that goes out and there's a fire in the city, his employees will respond to that, or a crash, his employees will respond to that too, and he keeps paying them while they're doing it. So it takes the community to make this happen, like you said, and we've got great volunteers. They've recently put together a board, and I know Mr. Hafe is serving on that board, and Mr. Mobley used to. I don't know who is on it now, but there's some organizational strategic planning going on with this group that hadn't in the years past, and I want to thank y'all for that and helping us to help you and bringing those needs to us at the budget workshop and saying, you know, I need 3 trucks, I could get by with 2, and the city council responded appropriately in the peril of even being unelected. So a half-cent tax rate went up to help fund the trucks, and you'd have thought we'd taken the firstborn child of everybody in town. So it's a tough call, but we're here to serve together. We consider you all a vital partner in our community, and we can't thank you enough. Brad can't thank you enough either for your station number 3 that is part of that ISO rating that helps our community. So I just didn't want that to go away.
Any other questions?
Mayor, just a comment. Matt, great presentation. I think this is great information that really deserves the community to know and understand and read. You know, having been on council, served on planning and zoning, one of the things I've heard over the years is, you know, one of the reasons that we don't have a Costco or a Target or you name the store because we have a volunteer fire department. Well, I think those same people are going to be surprised when they see the little corner Ace Hardware store that's going to come up there on FM4, and it's like, how did that happen? And I think Chris mentioned, I mean, you know, looking back over the years, I think City Council and the city staff have really come together and partnered with the Volunteer Fire Department. And as Chris said, you came to the budget workshop, you know, had a request. You know, we had a preliminary budget put together. We amended the budget. We added those 2 apparatuses into the budget, and as Chris said, you know, we took the tax rate up 0.5 cent to fund that, and that really is all about, you know, community service and community protection, and for me, that was an easy call. So we appreciate all you guys do, and Brad and all the people that are associated with the fire department. Richard, thanks for all you do, and we just have a great team of people. We appreciate all you do for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to add real quick, Ms. Faye Landham's also on our board.
Yeah, I thought so.
Sorry, Ms. Fay.
I think she might have had some influence on that $37,000 this year.
Maybe.
Maybe, yes. Thank you all. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate you coming forward, and certainly appreciate the work you and the board are doing.